We are group number 4 and our topic is formal and presentation. At the formal and presentation part of the curriculum design process, the data gathered from needs and environment analysis and principles come together in activities that involve the learners. And most of the decision will only be observable through the formal and presentation of the lesson. How to communicate the reason why each lesson is like it is a problem that curriculum designers face. There are some factors to consider about the environment, the needs, and principles. About the environment, we have the teacher. Teachers should present and manage the activities. Then we have the learners. The content should be attracted to the learners, and learners have the skill to do the activities. And the third one is the activities that should take account the learner's language to suit the size of the class and fit the learning style of the learners. Then we have the needs. So for the needs, we have 3. Okay, the lacks. Learners should be able to successfully complete all the activities. For the wants, the activities should take account of what the learners expect to do in language learning course, and the necessity is the kind of activities that should be useful to the learners in the future use or future language learning of the language. Then we have the principles, and for the principle we have 10 of them. Okay, the first one is motivation. The learner should be interested and excited about the learning. Then we have the 4 stands, and the course should include a balance of meaning focused input, meaning focused output, language focused learning, and fluency activities. There should be a balance between the 4 of them. Then we have comprehensible input, that the reading and listening should have substantial qualities of interested, comprehensible, and receptive activities. Then we have fluency. Language course should provide activities aimed to increase the fluency. The output. Learners should be pushed to produce, as we know, like writing and speaking the language. Then we have the delivery learning. Language-focused learning should be included on the sound system, the spelling, vocabulary, grammar, and discourse areas. Then we have time on task. As much time as possible should be spent using and focusing on the second language. And for the depth of processing, the learner should process the item to be as profoundly and reasonable as possible. Then we have also integrative motivation. A course should be presented so that the learners have the most favorable attitude to the language. The teacher's skills in teaching the language and to their change of success in learning the language. Then the learning style. There should be opportunity for learners to work with learning materials in way that most suit the individual learning style.
Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon, Miss. Today I'm going to talk about the 4 strands that we can find in curriculum design. So the first one is the meaning focused input. The last one is the meaning focused output, the language focused learning, and the last one is the fluency development. So I'm going to explain you about the meaning focused input. Crucial, we'll call it learning from comprehensible input. In language course, the most important way of providing a large amount of comprehensible input is to have an extensive reading program. So this involves the learning in reading books which have been especially written for learning of English in a cultural vocabulary. So, for learning at elementary and intermediate level, an extensive reading program is an essential part of any general English course. There also needs to be the listening equivalent of such a course. So learners can listen while they read. So another major source of meaning-focused input in a course comes from interacting with others. An advantage of interactive listening is that the listener can negotiate the meaning of the input with the speaker. So some activity that we can do in meaning-focused input are listening to stories, extensive reading, listening while reading, and communicative activities. So the other strand that I'm going to explain you is the meaning focus output. What is that? The meaning focus output involves learning through speaking and writing. Learning by input alone is not sufficient because the knowledge needed to comprehend input alone doesn't include all the knowledge which is needed to produce output. So the meaning focused speaking should involve the learner in conversation and also in monologue. The conversation can have a largely social focus and can also be used for conveying important information. So the conditions for meaning focus are similar to those for meaning focused input. There should be a focus on the message that is getting the listener or the reader to understand. The task should be demanding, but not too demanding, and there should be plenty of opportunity for such activities. So in this case, we can do these activities: the short talks, the communicative activities, writing stories and assignments, and letter writing. So Woodward and Lindström describe two ways of planning lesson. That is block and threads. What is block? Block provides support for the lesson planner in that once the type of block is chosen as being suitable for the goals that the teacher wants to achieve, the lesson itself requires very little planning because each part are predictable and the later parts build on the previous part of the lesson. So the other is threads. Threads are activities that run through a series of lessons. Two are activities that can be used again and again with minimal planning and only a small change. So that is all for my presentation. Thank you too much for your attention.
Following a set format, you will have to consider the environment to know what are the teacher's skills, the teacher's role, the time available, or the size of a typical class. The advantages are lessons are easier to make because each one doesn't have to be planned separately. It makes the course easier to monitor and makes the lesson easier to learn because learners can predict what will occur. The lesson format of this course is divided in the following parts: listening input usually with a mini focus. Language-focused learning, taking all points from the listening. Meaning-focused output, mainly in speaking, often involving pair and group work, and again, like activity. The principles at work in this lesson format seems to be there to be learning from comprehensible input as a basis for later activities. Language-focused learning will contribute to the production of output. Learners should have to produce language with a focus on the message. Repetition is an important aid learning to learning in a material should be recycled in the lesson. Learners' interest can be engaged through short activity, attractive presentation using pictures, and a degree of unpredictability regarding the types of exercise. And finally, learners need to know what they are doing a particular activity. That's it.
Hello, I'm here today just to tell you something about techniques and activities. First, what is techniques? Techniques is a particular method of doing an activity. Usually, is a method that involves particular skill. So, you need to develop techniques for dealing with students. This can be divided in 4 types. Let's see the material that I have here. As you can see here, experience activity about possible knowledge that perform the activity within the learners. In several ways, the teacher of the curriculum designer or materials to write it carefully controls the language, idea, skill, etc. The knowledge needed to do the activities is provided through previous lessons or previous activities within a lesson. The teacher helps the learners to share and recall previous experience to make activities easier. Shared activities involve the learner's achievement through group work. They could be not achieved by working done. The learners in a group have equal access to the same information. Each learner has a different piece of the task. One or more learners have all the information that the others need. The learner shares the same information, but each has a different task to do. These techniques are important for us because as a teacher, we want to find a good result in our students. So we have to have experience, share it, guided, and independent. Don't forget that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Maríq Jiménez, and I am going to present about techniques and activities as my partner Mariela was doing the number 1 and the number 2. The number 3, guided activities involves the learners doing already partly complete tasks. For example, completion activities, substitution activities, matching activities, repetition activities, ordering activities. All involves the teacher or curriculum design and provide part of what is needed so that the learning task is made easier and less likely to result in error. Guided activity usually involve language-focused instructions, so they may lead to a kind of meaning-focused activity where, for example, the learners produce sentences based on that involves them saying things are meaningful to them, for example, describing themselves. A very common format for learning spoken language is as follows. Letter A, the presentation of the model piece of language. The fundamental purpose is to provide a look at the goal of the lesson and subjects items for learning and practice. Letter B, the learners do tasks. The learners do guided tasks on parts of the Model 1 to prepare for the next section of the lesson. Letter C, the learners do activities like role plays or discussions. Here we have some techniques and activities about listening, speaking, reading, and writing. For example, experience, which is based on previous knowledge. For example, listening to a great reader, read aloud, linking skills. In speaking, ask and answer, talking about a very familiar topic, oral book and reports. Reading, easy extensive reading, linked skills, speed reading course. And writing, reading, discussing, and then writing. Draw and write project work. Number 2, shared. In this, you need support with other people. For example, in listening, breaking, strip story, speaking, brainstorming, find the different splits and information. Reading, pause, prompt, praise, peer reading. And writing, group composition, peer feedback, writing with a secretary, reformulation. Whatever activity, the same activity give everything to develop it. Here we have some examples for listening, speaking, reading, and writing about guided techniques. And independent, the student has to use different skills or recurse to develop it. For example, in speaking, giving a talk, telling a joke, taking part in an interview, reading, reading the newspapers, reading a novel, and writing a letter, writing an assignment. They can draw on their skills and make use of other recurses, but essentially they are in control of their own learning. The fourth type of activity provides a different kind of learning goal and means learning. Each kind of activity makes use of different set of principles, and it's useful to look carefully at major activity types within a course to see if they are agree within principles based on research and theory.